Hi, I'm Kevin. So this, when I was asked to do it, is a very broad subject. So I've tried to just kind of narrow it down. You're not going to learn everything from me. There's a lot to go over. So I'll just start. First thing you really want to do, and I'm not trying to push my service so much as this is just a smart way to go about things, get an audit. Audit the system, go through it, find out what its deficiencies are, what its problems are. When I come out and do an audit, I'm gonna run through the entire system. I'm looking for ways to get the most efficiency out of what you have. That's how I look at things. I don't want to spend a lot of money. I want to see a quicker return on investment. This is all about saving money and saving water. You save money, we save water, everybody wins. So that's the whole concept behind it. We're also able to create custom schedules based off of measurements and the observations we take during that audit that we can program any controller while we're there if you want. It's not mandatory, but we can automatically start you down the road of more efficient watering just by doing that. There are rebates tied to to any of the recommendations I might make. We'll get in a little more depth about the type of equipment after a little later down in this, but we're here to help. So I don't leave you with just a report and I walk away. You've got my number, you've got my email, you've got my contacts. I'll stay involved for as long as you need me to do it. I've worked with some people through a process for years, and the rebates are there for you for years down the road, so you don't have to jump in and do everything all at once. You might want to do just a little bit at a time, see how you like it, or that's just what you can afford. Again, those rebates will still be available to you based on what our recommendations were. So first thing is you got to know what you want if you're going to do a retrofit. That's the most important part. If you don't know, you're going to get into a world of hurt, especially financially. Right off the top, I'm going to start with retrofitting an actual system. See, I came out and I did the audit, and I made my recommendations, and we're just going to go strictly retrofitting the system that's already there. We're not going to make any changes to the landscape. We're just going to go for it. So, very important, with an audit, you're going to get this information. You want to know your head spacing. You want to know what types of heads you have. You want to know what the pressure is, what your gallons per minute are. All these are very important when designing a system or retrofitting. It's important information to know. So this shows basically old school traditional yard with just a spray system. A lot of sprays, a lot of equipment in the ground, a lot of pipe in the ground. A lot of things that can go wrong. The more you got, the more issues you can have. There's a lot of maintenance dealing with this. Typically around here, if you got sprays, even if they're working at the right pressure, they're not very efficient. So it causes you to have to overwater to compensate for these issues. You lose a lot to overspray, you lose a lot to misting, those kind of things. That's why you want to retrofit. That's why you want to kind of get away from that. We want to put your money on target. That's the only place it should go, and just what you need. So this shows basically if I was to change the entire system out to rotary nozzles, and those are the cute little ones that, cute little fingers, they spin. I'm sure you've all seen them by now. They've been on the market long enough that everybody's pretty familiar with them. So you can see I've got a lot less heads, all right? I've done some things by doing this. I've reduced the overspray, I've reduced the misting, and I've improved the coverage just by the product that I used. If something breaks, there's less of it to replace. So it's just a more effective way of going about irrigating your landscape than the more traditional that you see going in these days, or in yesteryear. Back when I was still digging in dirt when it was brand new. It used to be shiny back then. These are the jokes, folks. All right, so the other consideration is if you're going to change the landscape, and I do run into a lot of customers who talk about this when I go out on the audits. Well, we've been thinking about making some changes to, I want to add some beds here and take some turf out here and do some different things. And that's fine. That's, good thinking. But you want to approach it a little differently than if you're just going to retrofit a system. If you're going to change your landscape, you have to change the layout of the sprinkler system. It is designed to water what's there now. If you make changes to it, you're not going to save any water. And I've had customers that do this. Well, I put all these beds in and stuff, but they never moved any of the heads, so they're just watering everything like it's still bluegrass and can't figure out why is my water bill the same. So you got to make those changes. This is the more expensive approach to doing things. The payoff is going to be, a lot longer, but it will pay off. So you want to have the idea of what you want to do first. And again, as I was saying, so once you've figured out this is how this is going to work, I know what my landscape's going to look like, that's when you redesign the system. You may be able to do it with what you got. You may have to start from scratch. It kind of depends on the age of the system and what all is in the ground. And that can be really tough. Greeley's notorious for not having as-builts. And as-built is a plan of what's actually in the ground after it was installed. They don't seem to exist here, so it makes it a little tougher to kind of figure out what's where. If you do have to install a new system, or you're going to make some changes and you're going to have to run some new lines, use one of these. This is called a vibratory plow. It's also called a pipe puller. You can rent them. Easy to operate, and as you can see, this throws that pipe down to the right depth. It makes a little slit in the ground. It'll be healed up in 2 weeks. You'll never even know you did it. I see a lot of people trenching here. No need. I've never run into any ground out here that's hard enough to warrant it. You get over into Fort Collins, that's a different story, but here, these things work beauty, and there's no need to trench. Fun little video, huh? Now we're getting into it. This retail versus commercial. And I had this discussion with basically everybody I do an audit with. There's a lot of things you got to think about when you're buying new product. As far as the rebates go, I'll only rebate product that is commercial grade. The stuff that you buy in the retail stores is designed to fail. This is the stuff that us contractors stopped using because it didn't work right. The other stuff is, it's just inferior plastics. There's a lot of issues to it. They're not designed to the same tolerances. They break easier. Basically, as a contractor, I'm going to warranty my product. I'm going to warranty my work. Maybe 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. I don't like to work for free. So I'm not going to come back out and replace stuff when it breaks. I mean, I'm gonna, but I don't want to. So that's why I buy contractor quality stuff. I'm depending on these guys to sell me a product that's going to last. Retail's a little different story. I need all of you to come back next weekend and buy that head again. So I'm hoping it's leaking by the time you get it out the door. It's the only way I'm going to continue to make sales. If I'm giving you product that's always going to work, you won't come back for it. 2 ways to identify the two different things. Retail products tend to be compacted, all-in-one type of deals, a lot of shiny, colorful, stickers on them, things like this. Contractor quality product, it's always sold in separate pieces. Yeah, it costs a little bit more, but really the cost difference isn't that much when you consider how long that stuff's going to sit in the ground performing. You're not going to see the bright stickers. The materials are much higher quality because they're warranted by the manufacturer. They want that stuff to sit in the ground for a long time as well. And they want, the contractor to keep buying it. So there's a big incentive there. This is a good example too. The reason I put this one up here with the retail, those nozzles on there are rotary nozzles made by Rainbird about 10 years ago. You can't even get those in a supply house for a contractor. They haven't made them in years. Anything that we won't buy ends up on the shelves in the big box stores. So there's a reason it's there. On commercial product, everything has to be adjusted. Well, yeah, it really kind of depends on the product. She wanted to know the frequency of having to adjust commercial product. it's a hard one to kind of mash down, but if it's rotors, typically you don't really have to do much to them after you've gotten them set. Once in a while you'll get a goofy one, but not that often. Sprays are something that you'll always have to walk through, and I recommend doing it every 2 weeks and move them, because they'll move on you. And so, the nozzles will clog, those kind of things. So you got to kind of go through it and work on that. Great question. You can purchase commercial, fortunately for the citizens of Greeley, right here in Greeley, Denver Brass and Copper. It's down on 10th Street. I can't remember the road, but everybody remembers where Rafferty's was, correct? Okay, just west of there, same side of the road, at the bottom of the hill. It says Turf Tech Division on the sign in front of it. They sell to the public as well as contractors, although if they're busy with contractors, you will have to wait. That is correct. Do we do the audits just for City of Greeley residents? We do the audits for customers of the City of Greeley, water customers. So if you live somewhere else, but you're paying a Greeley water bill, yes, we'll do it. I recommend having an audit done every 2 years, whether it's residential or commercial. It helps to get your head around what's going on. Bigger the property, the more changes will happen. Our ground, it swells and it contracts and swells and contracts through the seasons, and things move. And so it's good to kind of get an eyeball on things and see what really needs to be done. So now we're going to talk about pressure. So dealing with pressure. A lot of people ask, why is it so high? And I get accused of, the pumps are on too much. And you got to turn the pumps down. In this area, it doesn't work like that. Our water comes from a plant in Bellevue, and it runs down a couple of big 27-inch lines to the city. Well, yeah, now we got a 60-inch, but it's gravity fed. It's just higher up there than it is down here. We do have pressure reducers in place in the system to try and control it, but the weight of that water is just too great. So that's why some areas got some pretty substantial pressure. I've measured as high as 140 PSI static. So it's up there in some places. In some places it's a little lower. When you get into the older part of town, you're going to see it drop quite a bit, and that's because of the size of the lines that were originally installed. You get out further west, they're larger lines. We're planning for more, so that's why you see these things change. We can't go in and remove pipe and put bigger pipe in. So, it's just too expensive. But like I said, I can fix that problem. So this is a great example of high pressure. These are sprays, and they were running at about 78 PSI. It's a car wash. Easily a third of the water coming out of this system never touches the ground. It's just wafting off. It's blowing into the air. You're making clouds for farmers in Kansas. They all owe you a card on Christmas. It causes a lot of overspray. It also interferes with the way that these nozzles are designed to deposit water. Even though sprays do a lousy job to begin with, it's a lot worse the higher the pressure gets. The precipitation rate on sprays is notoriously high anyway, usually about 1.58 inches an hour. When you get into pressure issues like this, you're closer to 3 inches an hour. So you're watering with a hurricane, basically. So the water's not going to go in the ground. It's coming down too fast. It's just going to run off the property. So there's a lot of waste when you got pressure issues. So that's why one of the things you got to address. 2 ways that I approach this. If I'm going to go and I'm going to do a test on a system and I see that the pressure is higher than 75, and you know this, I'm going to say, put a pressure reducer on the system, typically downstream of the backflow preventer. I just want to get that pressure down off the entire system. I want things to last longer, and they're not designed to be working at that high of a rate. But that doesn't solve the problem at the head. And the reason is, you don't know who put this in, and nobody's got an as-built to see how they did it. Was our hydrology right? Who knows? A lot of times I see systems where you got a valve on one side of the house and that lateral line goes all the way around the house and goes to the front, and there's actually a head at the end of the line. Now, if I reduce the pressure just at the point of connection, it's going to be dismal out front. It's not going to work. But if we use heads that have pressure reducers built into them with check valves, we can deliver optimum pressure to every single nozzle and not have to worry about who designed it, how it's laid out. We're still going to get maximum efficiency from every single nozzle on that system. The check valves, what they do is they prevent what's called low head drainage. What happens when a zone shuts down, unless it's really flat ground, is the lowest head on that zone, when it shuts off, is going to drain a line out. That water doesn't go all over your grass like it's intended. It goes down the gutter or into the neighbor's yard or whoever, you know. It doesn't go where it was supposed to go. We want to keep that water in that line for its next use. So if you've ever turned on your system and you hear the, you know, it's blowing air, you got low head drainage. And that's what's happening. You're losing water somewhere. You're not gaining the benefit of that water that you paid for. This is an example of multi-stream rotors, the rotary nozzles, working at the right pressure. They were on the right type of heads. They were at optimum pressure. We were measuring, that's what these little cups are out here. And the distribution uniformity, how well it was depositing that water over the area, was extremely high, a lot higher than you normally see. Sprays, on a good day, you might get about 50% distribution uniformity. These were 80. So vast difference. The more evenly we put the water down, the less of those dry spots we got and the less extra water we got to do to compensate. So you really want that high distribution uniformity. These can achieve that. And you notice these big fat droplets, no misting. This is what you want. You know, these don't get disrupted by wind and breeze as much because of those fatter droplets hitting down. So they go more on target like they're supposed to in a nice breezy place like Greeley. What I showed you earlier with the sprays going off and all that mist, you saw that stuff wafted around. That was a still morning. There was no breeze. In a real breeze, that stuff goes all over the place because it's very minute droplets because it's moving through the nozzle so quickly. Actually, you do. You get much better. Sprays do not spray around themselves. They depend on the head to spray back next to them. Rotors do an okay job of it. Rotary nozzles actually do a supreme job of it. They put down the same amount of precipitation from the head out to the end of their radius. You just don't see it because they're smaller droplets. If you have them, turn them on when the sun is just coming up, so you get the sun ray through it, you'll see it.
So you don't need to overlap?
You do. I mean, you really do want that overlap. It's important for more even coverage. But if you've got a system that you're retrofitting and there's just no other way, you'll have a better result using the rotary nozzle than you would any other type of head. How do they work with non-potable water? Yes, you do. If you talk to the reps, they're going to tell you, oh, they work wonderful. But I'll be honest with you, any type of spray nozzle, any type of irrigation, anything, whether it be rotors, rotary nozzles, sprays, they all got filters. And anything that can get through the size of the filter that's on them should pass through the head. But everything else is going to get packed up in there. And I know your situation. It's like that silica. Those are snail shells. Yeah. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to filter that. Unfortunately, these folks are on the non-pot system here in Greeley. We got excellent filtration at the pump site where we pump that water, that non-pot water, but snail eggs can get past it. And what happens is these snail eggs get past it, and then the snails hatch in the line past anywhere we can filter. So we add a material to it, to the water. It's not toxic except to the snails, and it kills the little itty bitty microscopic snails, but doesn't do anything to the shells, and that's what you're seeing. It's like real fine white sand, and it clogs things up. In that situation, you've got to have some type of filter that self-cleans. Two ways of looking at it if you're going to change your landscape to accommodate, and you're going to change the sprinkler system, I need a different way of watering these plants. I'm not going to water them like the turf, so I need to separate those two. And that's why it's so important to change your sprinkler system when you change your landscape. Bedding plants don't require the same amount of water or the same type of watering schedule as turf does. So you've got to have these separate zones to accommodate that. Drip or point source watering is the most efficient way that you can deliver water to a plant. It's got a distribution uniformity over 90. Nothing else can top it. Rain doesn't get that high. The only downside to installing drip is you have to move your emitters to accommodate that plant. If you watch anybody install drip, and if you go YouTube it, they always do the same thing. They put the emitters right next to the plant when they plant the plant, and then it cover with mulch, and there it stays. Problem is, as the plant gets bigger, the root base goes out, and where it collects that water is out past that foliage. You've got to move those emitters out to deliver water to that root zone, because that's what we're watering. We're just watering roots. We're not watering the plant. In order to still have effectiveness with a drip system, that is a lot of maintenance. And I don't even know if you can find a contractor that'll go out there and do that for you. Usually we just turn on and go, yeah, it works. That's drying up, just turn it up. This is an example of what I'm talking about the drip line. This is a tree, but this is true for any type of woody plant. This is what they do. It's like an iceberg. The part you see is only a third of it. The part underneath, that's the part that we're actually trying to water and feed. The top part, it's doing its own thing. So you can see, and let me see if I can do this with, I don't know if everybody can see the little arrow, but this drip line here, when it rains, it follows this canopy around, and it'll fall down past that canopy. The roots underneath there are just the support roots. They're keeping that plant in the ground, they're keeping it in place. The roots out past that drip line are the ones that are taking in the nutrients, taking in the water. So that's what we got to water. That's where we have to concentrate the water at. And this is where the big argument starts. I believe in broadcasting. Now, it is a bit of a waste when you've got new plantings, because you've got a lot of open area, doesn't need the water, but you're watering it anyway. But as that bedding material matures like this, all I'm doing is watering roots, and by doing it in this fashion, I'm delivering a lot closer to rain, where it's falling where it needs to go. And basically, if you've dug up in a nice mature bedding, it's all roots. I mean, it's just a giant network. So it's a living organism, the whole thing. There's all kinds of things involved in that soil. It's alive. So we want to keep it all alive. We'll have healthier plants, more stress and drought tolerant by doing it this way. There's going to be a big argument tomorrow. But in this instance, I don't know if you can really see it that well, but one of the things that I do recommend, instead of converting a zone to drip, you can use the same zone that was already there if you're converting the same area, and just remove the heads, put in 12-inch heads. So they still retract to the ground, so you can't see them, but when they activate, they got a 12-inch riser, so they can get up, and they get up over that mature foliage, and use the rotary nozzles. We're depositing big droplets. We're emulating rain, which is what these machines are supposed to do in the first place. And we're delivering it over the area in a nice, gentle fashion. So we're also washing off the leaves, and as well as, not everything wants to be washed on the leaves. Roses are a great example. In that instant, yeah, you're going to want to use drip. She wanted to know Yeah, do you have to have separate zones, or what the timing would be if you were to convert an area to bedding? And yeah, you've got to separate it. You have to separate it. Adding drip to a spray zone achieves you squat. You're either underwatering one thing or overwatering the other. The way you water turf is deep and infrequent. We want to drive root depth. I want 12 inches or better. That's your reservoir. The deeper that root depth, the healthier the lawn, more drought tolerant and more stress tolerant, and the more weed tolerant that lawn is. Bedding plants are something different, all right? With them, they've got one job. They're supposed to look all flowery and beautiful and keep the bees happy. I want to give them just enough water all the time so that they never are without. I don't want to drown them, but I want to make sure that they're getting just what they need all the time, so it's always available to them. This also moves more oxygen into the soil, and so you'll end up with a healthier plant. But again, 2 different ways of watering. Yeah, that's why I always say use the 3 days a week, even in the spring. What you want to do is adjust your run times. If you wanted to know about sandy soils, and am I applying enough in the sandy soil, or will I lose it too fast? When I'm talking about that infrequent and deep, I'm still using basically the 3 days like we had before, all right? So let's say Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. When I turn the system on in the spring, well, I use a smart controller, so it's doing all this for me, but if your controller has a percentage or a seasonal adjust, they say different things, but what it is, when you turn to it, it'll show 100%. And what that means is it's going to run 100% of the amount of time that you have on all your zones, okay? Turn it back to 30%. So I'm still getting the water into that top layer of soil where those roots are, and I know I'm going to lose some of it, but this way I'm always providing it, about every 2 to 3 days. And so we're not going into a wilt factor at all. We're always keeping that tank above 50%. As it starts getting warmer, you increase that percentage up. And then, in July, you're typically at 100. Real hot years, you're at 110, 120. And then you ramp it back down again in the fall. So there's kind of an algorithm to it, but every year is different. So, save yourself the headache and, get a smart controller. And why we're talking about smart controllers? If you have me come out and do an audit and you follow the recommendations that I've made, not only will you get the rebate, which is typically 50% of the product, whatever it might be, I'll also come back out, remeasure, create a new custom schedule for you because it'll be different, and I'll install and program a smart controller for free. So that's my carrot. No, there are no water restrictions on new plantings, but if you're putting in something substantial, large area that might increase your water bill, call us and let us know, and we will put you, we'll get you a watering variance to water that in and get it established so that you don't go over your 100% and go up into a higher tier. We just kind of put you on a flat rate for that time. That was a long question. But basically he wants to know, there's a chart that we used to send out with water bills that had the little algorithm I've talked about earlier about adjusting that percentage or how many inches you put down based on the time of year. He was wondering if there's something like that they put out for smart controllers, and no, there isn't, and there's a reason for that. That graph that she just handed you is based on an average, okay? It is not accurate by any means. I mean, it's just a ballpark figure. The smart controller is taking the weather into account and it's keeping track of solar radiation, temperature, rainfall, humidity, and it's using those to calculate how much water you're losing to the ground on a daily basis. When it's its turn to water, it knows how much it has to put down. So when you start it up, it might be at 50%, it might be at 10. It really depends on those days and the time of year. So basically, for the first time ever, I know We've been saying this for years, get your hands on the clock. With a smart controller, get your hands off that clock. Let it do its job. That's what it's supposed to do. So it's making those adjustments every single day for you, as opposed to you going out, once a month and changing your times or the percentages. So it's far more accurate, and you'll actually have a healthier landscape for it and a lower water bill, obviously. Thanks. If anybody wants an audit.
Next month is Xeriscape Design, and Sarah Boyd, our Parks Planner designer, is going to be doing that class. Was very popular last year, so you might want to come to that one. Garden in a Boxes go on sale in March. It's usually that first week of March. It used to be right March 1, but I don't know. But just check. You can get on their pre-sale list, and they'll let you know. And those are pre-planned gardens that come with 2 to 3 designs and all the plants, and it's gives you the maintenance and all of the information about plants. It's a really easy way to try out Xeriscape if you're a little unsure.